Everyone's a photographer these days, but remember, there are many different types of photography and they'll each have their own best practices and approaches. Folks offering advice on photography will be giving it from the perspective of their niche. That may not be yours. I'm Sean, and I've been a photojournalist for more than 25 years. I work with the New York Times, the Washington Post, Getty Images, the Associated Press, and many others. Find a niche or a few niches. This doesn't mean you can't do photography in those spaces. That just means that you've concentrated your efforts somewhere specific. Use a traditional camera to unlock your potential as a photographer. Smartphones are great, but traditional cameras are designed to fit the human hand with dials and buttons placed so that we can take advantage of our muscle memory. The human eye can process a wider range of dark and light values than a camera can. A basic challenge in photography is understanding the range of the camera in your hand. In the photography world, this range between black and white is known as dynamic range. In the film days, this was referred to as latitude. It can be a limitation or a tool. Negative film has a wider latitude than slide film. Modern day digital cameras have a wider dynamic range than early digital cameras. Raw photo files provide more dynamic range than their JPEG counterparts. Give yourself personal projects to work on. Photography is much more than just being a technician with the camera. There's a human element. There's storytelling. Don't be afraid to crank your ISO. This is one of the modern marvels of camera technology. And if you're not taking advantage of it, you're limiting yourself. Go out and shoot till your heart's content. In the past, it was exponentially more expensive to practice photography. Embrace the fact that this barrier has been broken and practice as much as you want and as much as you can. Athletes practice, musicians practice, photographers should be practicing too. Does your photo have a main point or a subject where the viewer can enter the frame? If your shop has no door, how do you expect people to come in? Turn the open sign on. Most sensors on modern day cameras are overkill. Don't worry too much about this when making a new camera purchase. Avoid kit lenses that come with cameras. Get a prime, 35mm or 50mm instead. Most kit lenses are cheap plastic items developed to help sell cameras to beginners. A prime lens will encourage you to walk around and explore the scene with your feet. A zoom lens encourages lazy photographer syndrome. Prime lenses will typically have larger maximum apertures with larger range and depth of field. The larger aperture allows more light to reach the camera sensor, allowing for faster exposures and less light. Many lenses are valued because of how the out of focus parts look. A fast lens is a lens with a large aperture. Here's a 50mm f1.4 and here a 400 2.8. Both of these are considered fast lenses. Lenses, especially among sports photographers, are often referred to as glass. Lenses are more important investments than camera bodies. Photographers replace cameras way more than they replace lenses. My current 70-200 is on its third camera body. Think about this when making gear purchases. The word photography originates from the Greek expression drawing with light. Photography is all about light. Don't ever forget this. Light has four main characteristics: intensity, quality, color, and direction. Study and master these things, and you can master photography. Patience is one of the most overlooked qualities in great photographers. Some street photographers go to the same corners again and again and again. Some landscape photographers trek out to their favorite spots repeatedly. Eventually, things come together at the right moment and the photographer is ready. Luck is at the intersection of preparation and opportunity. Be an observer. Take notes of patterns. Be ready when they repeat. Pre-visualize the photo that you're trying to make. Stake out your space and let the action wash over you. This is how you make photography more comfortable for the photographer and the ones being photographed. Let the action come to you. If you're always chasing your photographs, you're just going to have people's backs, speaking both literally and metaphorically. And if people are actually involved, chasing people, it gets kind of creepy. Study and implement principles of storytelling. Are there characters? Do they want something? Vary your lenses and perspective like a filmmaker does. Think about telling stories with multiple photos. Shift from wide to medium to tight. You can make tight photos with a wide lens And you can make wide photos with a long lens. It just depends what's in front of you. Don't pursue photography because you're looking for money. It's not impossible to make a living with still photography, but I don't think it's ever been harder. However, in the modern age of communication, photography skills will undoubtedly bleed over into video work where there's a lot more opportunity. Those who study photography will have a big leg up here. When you're holding your camera, put one hand underneath the lens and the body. Ego is the enemy. You're not as good as you think you are, but imposter syndrome is real. It's a tug of war between the two, and that's okay. Study the photography of historical masters and contemporary photographers. Look beyond social media. Go to the city library. The University of South Carolina has a great photo book collection. Maybe your local university has a gold mine. Print your photos. Not all your photos, but print some photos that you like, and then print some photos that you've cranked your ISO on. Take a look at the technical execution and how it looks like in physical form. Build a tool belt of photo skills. Master the silhouette, portraiture, the decisive moment. The list could go on and on and on and on. Keep those tools sharp and don't be afraid to add more. Incorporate your tool belt to help with storytelling. Vary the types of photos to help hold the viewer's attention. Get to know your subject matter. If you're photographing baseball, learn about infield fly rules, drop third strikes, and runners tagging up. Photograph things that interest you. This will help keep you involved in projects and reflect in the quality of your work. You won't find yourself doing deep work if you don't want to swim. Keep this in mind when picking personal projects. If it's going to involve days with a particular subject or at a particular location, ask yourself if that's actually how you'd like to spend your days. As photographers, we often miss out on the great subjects that are in our own neighborhoods and backyards. Traveling gives us the opportunity to explore new things visually and can often remind us of the cool things that we have back at home. If you find yourself in a creative photography funk, travel. This might be 30 minutes, 3 hours, or 3 days. Either way, look at new things. Change your environment. Make sure your camera batteries are charging or charged each night before you go to bed. You should be ready to go the next morning. Apply this to yourself as a human being as well. Don't be afraid to commit to the practice of photography. To get good, you have to practice. Shoot free throws. Play pickup games. Study the pros. Blur and focus are different things, and it's a great example of how vocabulary can impact the learning process for a photographer. It's one of my pet peeves, and I've made a video just about it. Practice making photos in manual mode and getting your head around the exposure triangle. You may find that aperture priority mode best suits your style of photography, but without knowledge of this exposure triangle, you're really going to limit your abilities in photography. If there are people in your photographs, eyes can play a really crucial role. Faces can help photographers communicate emotion, and photographers can capture this by exercising patience. You can also make great, interesting photos without people's faces or eyes and just chopping people apart. Look at and reset your ISO every time you pick up your camera for a new session. Stash extra memory cards in your wallet, in your vehicle, your camera bag, and your desk drawer. If you use a flash, try methods where you get it off the top of your camera. Work a scene by exploring the angles and walking around a subject as much as possible. Observe how the light and the background changes. Don't assume you already have the best angle. Culling, the process where a photographer selects the best photos from a session, is a separate skill than making the photos. That's why many photographers choose a career path that takes them through the role of a picture editor where you're culling other people's work. Identify things that can ruin or detract from a photo. Establish them as boundaries and stick to them. But don't be afraid to experiment. Look at visual artists like Edward Hopper and study how they use light, contrast, and color to make their masterpieces. Your subject should typically be in focus and exposed correctly. And the last one that everyone seems to forget, for goodness sake, please, people, level your horizons.